Hi, Dr. Eric Ballcabbage, and welcome back for Thyroid Success Secret number 11. And today we're going to talk about blood sugar dysregulation. In previous Thyroid Success Secrets, I said there's 5 priorities that I take a look at when I'm checking out anybody's health. And the first one was autoimmune. We want to identify if somebody's got an autoimmune condition because that's a red flag for me in trying to improve somebody's quality of life and somebody's health. 2, we want to look at it and see if they have an anemia pattern. 3, we want to look at blood sugar regulation. 4, we want to look at liver and gut function. And 5, we want to look at fatty acid metabolism. And today we're going to talk about blood sugar regulation. We talked that when we talked about anemia patterns, I said there's 2 primary fuel sources for the body. One is oxygen and one is glucose, and that's properly regulated glucose. So if you don't have oxygen, the body and the brain just does not work appropriately, and all physiology is going to be compromised. The same is true for glucose. If you don't have appropriate blood sugar physiology, you are going to have problems with almost every system in your body. And supporting a thyroid when somebody's got a blood sugar problem becomes futile. So you can't have appropriate thyroid physiology without the fuels that run it. So glucose and oxygen are really important. So let's talk about glucose. How do you know if you have a blood sugar problem? Well, when we look at lab ranges, the lab ranges are just too wide for most people. Lab ranges on most lab reports, it's anywhere from 60 to 65 at the low end. To 100 is probably the high end. It's just too wide of a range to really detect when somebody's starting to have a blood sugar regulation problem. And that's why we use the functional ranges, which I talked about in Success Secret number 1. The functional range for appropriate blood sugar regulation is 85 to 99. So if you're below 85, we call that a reactive hypoglycemia. Your blood sugar actually dips too low, and people who have reactive hypoglycemia usually get tired and fatigued between meals. They may get shaky, they may get weak, they may wake up not even hungry at all, and they skip breakfast, and then they wind up plummeting and needing something sugary to eat in a hurry. That's a reactive hypoglycemic. At the other end, if the blood sugar is over 99 but under 126, that's called insulin resistance. So we've had high levels of circulating blood sugar for an extended period of time because of our diet. That's caused the cells to become insulin resistant. So now the sugar can't get into the cells of the body real easily. So blood sugar levels go up. We become more insulin resistant. And what our body does is start to produce or promote body fat storage. And we'll typically see other markers like elevated triglycerides and cholesterol and LDL levels as a person becomes insulin resistant. Most people have heard of hypoglycemia where the blood sugar is really low, below 60, 65. That's where a doctor, typical or traditional doctor, will get involved. Or we've heard of diabetes, where your blood sugar is over 127 twice, and then doctors will typically get involved there. But a lot of times people won't get involved until they're out of lab range, yet somebody may have all the symptoms of a blood sugar problem and it's just not being evaluated appropriately. So if you crave sugars after a meal, if you crave sugars but they don't seem to satisfy you, if you seem like you just can't stop eating because you're always hungry, if you get tired or shaky between meals, if you get sleepy within an hour after a meal, these are all indications that you may have a blood sugar problem, and it is a primary priority for helping somebody who has hypothyroid symptoms, especially the fatigue factor, because if you have a blood sugar problem, a lot of the symptoms of blood sugar dysregulation are similar symptoms to hypothyroid function. So one of the key things that needs to be looked at is, do you have a blood sugar problem? So the best way to determine that is obviously a couple tests. One, a blood sugar test, a glucose level. It obviously needs to be done as a fasting. Sometimes I see lab reports and a person's blood sugar is 115, and I'll ask them if that was a fast, and they'll say no. If you didn't have a good 12-hour fast for a blood sugar or blood glucose level, it's not a good level. You really need to have a good fast. That means nothing to eat or drink other than some water for about 12 hours before that blood's drawn. There's some other good things that or good tests that we can take a look at to determine if somebody's got a functional blood sugar problem, because sometimes a person will go get a lab done and their blood sugar is 89 and they look really good. So we have to look at some other factors to determine if they have a blood sugar problem. So we may run a marker called LDH, lactose dehydrogenase. If that is below 140, It's a good indication that they have a reactive hypoglycemic state. Their blood sugar has a tendency to drop too low during the day. We also want to look at hemoglobin A1c, which is a marker of insulin resistance. So if their blood sugar is within range, let's say it's within the functional range at maybe 98, but their hemoglobin A1c is pushing the border of insulin resistance, or they are over that border of insulin resistance, which is, depending on the lab, 5.6, 5.7, then we know we've got a blood sugar dysregulation that we need to address and manage if we're going to help this person get healthy and get well. So, long story short, other causes of hypothyroidism other than Hashimoto's is definitely blood sugar dysregulation. So a good blood chemistry, which includes not only a fasting glucose, but an LDH level and a hemoglobin A1c, are really important, along with a health assessment form, so we can get an idea of what somebody's symptomatology is like, so we can identify blood sugar problems. So that's thyroid success secret number 11. Blood sugar dysregulation or altered blood sugar levels is a cause of hypothyroid symptoms. If you're struggling with hypothyroid symptoms and you're ready for a change, pick up the phone, call the office, 610-558-8920, and be scheduled for a thyroid consultation. Take care.